Hello everyone and welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, the show where I review stuff that's mostly pretty good and maybe one of the best movies of all time, or I review something just plain up garbage and should remain in the depths of hell. Um, Sorry this video is a little bit later. I did say that this one will be coming out on Tuesday. Scheduling conflicts along with school kind of prevented that a bit. So I had to postpone this episode to Wednesday. So hopefully the next episode will be on its original release schedule. So um, let's hope for the best. But anyway, let's get on to the review. So this week, or with this day, because technically I'm having 4 reviews coming out this week. So the first one is we're gonna be doing for the second episode of season 2. I'm gonna be reviewing TRON, released in 1982, and was actually the first ever movie to use computers for its visual effects, which, I think that's crazy. To see, something like this, and back in the 80s, nonetheless, when, 1982, this was the same year that the Commodore 64 came out, along with several other computer products, but mainly the Commodore 64 was the big one. Um, but, um, this is like, even if the movie isn't good, this is still a groundbreaking achievement for visual effects. Because, like I said, this is the first ever movie well, to use a large extent of visual effects. Um, I think the first one to ever really use computers was like back in like 1979 or something like that. Sometime before Tron was released, or was even thought of. But Tron was the first one to start using computers for a large majority of the effects. Um, but But anyway, let's get on to the actual movie itself. Um, so this was made with a budget of only $17 million which is for the visual effects is really quite surprising. Domestically it made over 33 million, and worldwide it made over 50 million. So this was a financial success. But it didn't make the money that Disney was hoping for. Because yes, as you guys couldn't tell by the front of the box, this is a Disney movie. Um, the actual idea for this movie came around when they were trying to do um, I think by this point they made about 4 sequels. Well, no, 3 sequels. 2 or 3 sequels by this point to The Vault Book, which, if you guys don't know what that is basically what kickstarted the Herbie franchise. Um, but yeah, they just kept on releasing Herbie movies and recycling footage from previous films. So Disney was really trying to look for something different, and the Disney found the script for Tron, and they were like, yeah, let's try this out. And this was directed by Steven Lisberger, who by this point I think he was only making cartoons at the time using I think but he was also using laser animation as well in his cartoons. So it shows that he really did try. Um, Even back in like before he even made the script for Tron, that he really wanted to push computer effects, and it clearly shows in Tron. Um, but anyway, let's get to the plot. So when talented computer engineer Kevin Flynn, played by Jeff Bridges, finds out that Ed Dillinger, played by David Warner, an executive at his company, has been stealing Flynn's work, He tries to hack this into the system. However, Flynn is transported into the digital world when he has to face off against Dillinger's computerized likeness, Sark, and the imposing master control program. Aided by Tron, played by Bruce Box Lit Bruce Box uh Bruce B- Box Littner. I'm really sorry if I butchered that last name. I probably most likely did. And Yuri, played by Sidney Morgan. Flynn becomes a freedom fighter for the oppressed programs of the grid. Um, so yeah, this really, I don't know whether to call this a video game movie, because it's, yeah, it takes place within a game. Um, but funny enough, there actually was several video games based off of Tron released after the movie came out, and yet I think still some people classify this movie as a video game movie. Um, I mean, yeah, most of the movie takes place within a game, but I mean, I guess it technically kind of is a video game movie, but in terms of like comparing it to like just uh just for namesake, the Super Mario Brothers movie, that one was based off of a video game, so that would be more like that would make more sense calling that a video game movie. This is based off of a game that didn't exist until after the movie came out, or several games. But um, to call this a video game movie, um, I mean it technically is correct, but it's also I don't really know. Um, but um, I want to call this a typical video game movie. Uh, like I said, with the Super Mario Brothers movie, Sonic the Hedgehog that came out this year, and several like other ones like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, because those were actually based, like I said, based off of real games. While Tron was a video game, was takes place within a video game, but the actual video games that were in the movie were made later after the movie came out. Um, Even like a full year after the movie came out. So it's not your usual typical video game movie. Um, and Tron has actually have such a legacy that it not only got a sequel, Tron Legacy, which I believe came out in 2011, which I will talk about a bit at the end of this video, along with several merchandise tie-ins, along with this really cool Funko Pop. This is obviously Tron himself. What's really cool about this Funko Pop because there's two Tron Funko Pops so far. There's Tron himself, and then there's Sark. I don't have him currently. I do want to try and pick him up at some point. But what's really cool about this one, I don't know about the Sark one, is that this one actually glows in the dark. I actually did take a couple screenshots the previous day or the previous 2 days to kind of illustrate what the glow in the dark really like has an effect on this Funko Pop. Now, bear in mind these pictures were taken in a very dark room, so it's kind of hard to tell like what the image really is. But just to show you, this is the front. Okay, I'm gonna try and make it so that there's not that much glare. So there's what is this, like the front of the Funko Pop, and then we're gonna go. Oh, then we're gonna go. Now this is the back of it. So yeah, like this is like the real full effect of the glow in the dark. I think it actually looks really well. Obviously, it doesn't look as good as on a photo or even on a video as it does in real life. But uh, take my word on this. If you are trying to get Funko Pops, or at least just have a few, do grab this one, and the Sark one. If the Sark one also does the same thing, like I said, I don't have that one currently, but do pick this one up. It's a really didn't realize that my phone turned off, but do grab this one because it is really cool. But anyway, stop talking about merchandise and let's get on to the cast of Tron. So, um, we obviously have Jeff Bridges as Kevin Flynn, who is the main. Well, it's kind of hard to choose the main, like who is the main protagonist of the film, because you have Jeff Bridges, and then you have or as Kevin. So you have Flynn, and then you have Tron. Um, Now Tron is the poster boy. Uh, you know, his literally the title of the movie. But he has he in terms of the real world stuff, not as much. But in terms of the video game, most of the scenes in the film is like has Tron on screen. Um, Jeff Bridges, I feel like, is the main character of the film. Yeah, Tron may be the poster boy and may have is the main character. He he might be the central character, but I think the real hero of the picture is Flynn, is Jeff Bridges. And I gotta be completely honest, Tron is so fucking bland. Like he barely really does anything. Um, but um, yeah, it just really it kind of sucks that like his character is kind of bland because he has a good chunk of the amount of scenes in the film, but it just doesn't. Whenever he's on screen, like there's some scenes that I'll get to where I felt like yay, like I'm excited that Tron's on screen, but most of the time it's just like he wasn't a bad character in general. No, not at all. And plus, it didn't even really detract from my overall opinions of the movie. But I just like if you're trying to make a central character, don't write him with just generic dialogue and make him. Because in the beginning of the movie, he really just seems like kind of um uh just kind of just like he kind of just distanced himself for everyone except for another character which I'll get to in a bit. Um, but over the course of the movie, I will give Tron this though. Over the course of the movie, the computer program, not the real life counterpart, who is Alan Bradley. Um, but Tron, I guess, really goes through an arc in the film. Like I said, he starts out being kind of just cold and not really likable. But over the course of the movie, he starts to subtly like um become more likable until the end, where it really seems like a lot. He's like a cool guy to hang around with. Um, and yeah, like he's. It's really about it. Um, but going back to Jeff Bridges real quick, like I said, he's like the main character in my opinion, and it appears for actually a lot of other people that actually agree that Tron's just kind of eh. He's like a bland character. And that Jeff Bridges is really the the main guy. But moving on, we have Cindy Morgan as Lewis Baines, also known as Yori in the video game world. Um, she doesn't really appear too much out in the movie. She really, she has her um she barely pops up in the beginning, and then during the second half of the when we're inside the video game, we she all of a sudden Yuri pops up and we're like, who is she? And then you're like, oh, it's Louis from the real world. That's kind of cool. Um, but yeah, she doesn't really pop up throughout the movie that much until, like I said, like near the the second half of the film. And then she has one more final scene at the end of the film, which I'll get to in a bit. Um, we have the fantastic David Warner as Ed Dillinger, also in the video game as Sark and the Master Control Program. Well, the voice of the Master Control Program per se. Um, so anyway, David Warner in this film, um, he does a very fine performance, like he usually does. And, you know, like I said in he would later go on to star in Star Trek 5 and even Star Trek 6. And those films are, you know, one of them is a very good movie, and the other one is massive guilty pleasure in my opinion. But even then, David Warner saves the film for that one bad one. And, you know, I just think that, you know, that's real credibility to, you know, David Warner. And he does a great performance in this film as just a sniny little douche. Um, and yeah. We have Don Shore as Ram, who is Tron's buddy. Who they play they have a light cycle match, which is probably the most iconic thing out of this whole movie is the light cycles. Um, but yeah, they have the light cycle match and then they escape. Um, Unfortunately, after they escape, they Ram gets mortally wounded and he does unfortunately die. Um, but I guess he does get the confirmation that um, uh, because Flynn, as I said, he gets transported into the game, so it's basically what the programs call their users. So basically, Flynn is a user uh, in the game. So he has like all these different like abilities that usual programs don't get. Um, so um, yeah. So Ram asks him like, "Are you a user?" And he's like, "Yeah." And Ram is like, "Please help Tron, stop this." And then he does die. Um, which is it's a very sad scene because he's a cool kid. Like he's funny, and to see him go out like that, it's kind of harsh. And then finally we have Bernard Hughes as Dr. Walter Gibbs, also known as Dumont in the video game world. Um, Dumont, um, he's fun. He's the guy that basically lets Tron communicate with Alan in the real world to get instructions about how to destroy the MCP. Um, and then um, he is eventually delivered along with all the other elders. I guess that's what they're called. It's never really confirmed. What like Dumont and the rest of his like group are. I'm just gonna call them the elders because that's what they look like. Um, but yeah, the elders are taken to to the MCP, to get their, I guess, their energy drained to help the Master Control Program. because he's realized that all these that Tron and Flynn have escaped, and they are coming straight for him. So he's like, "Yep, I'm just need to take you and you, and take all of you guys, so that I can become more stronger and defeat these renegade programs." Um, and um, all the elders are saved. Because Tron and Flynn saved the day along with Yuri. Um, but but yeah. So yeah. Um, but I guess now we should go into my favorite scenes. Because obviously, like all my movie reviews, I always have my favorite scenes, and then we go on to the fun facts or fun fact or facts that I have, and then the music. Then I talk about the music slash the composer, and then I give my overall final rating. Um, but let's talk about my favorite scenes. Um, um, so favorite scene number one is, huh? It's really hard trying to pick a favorite scene from the beginning of the film, especially with the fact that really nothing happens until when Flynn enters the game world, and then it actually starts getting a lot more interesting. Um, but I think my first favorite scene would probably have to be when is Flynn's first in the movie. It's specified that he has tried multiple times to get into the into the game world, but the first attempt to get in the movie, which is kind of near the beginning after Alan figures out that, or actually no, this is before. Um, so you see Flynn typing on his home computer, typing in a program to go in and try and figure out what to get data. Um, um, and um, the overall sequence is it's kind of cool. It's like the first real. I mean, besides the first life cycle match that we see in the film, which is a little bit before this sequence, which that was kind of the first glimpse um, of the game world. But this is like the real first glimpse of um, what the game world is, and I think it looks superb. Um, Next favorite scene is really when both Alan and Kevin, or both Alan and Flynn in the real world are trying to get into the game. Um, but um, Alan's at his computer terminal in one of the upper floors, while Flynn is in the laser room, trying to get a program in as well. Um, Apparently, the Master Control Program knows that Flynn's trying to get in through the laser control or the laser room computer, because you could hear him like talking through the computer, and like see like little dialects, probably like, "You shouldn't have come back, Flynn." Um, which is it's actually one of my favorite lines where you see um um Flynn typing in a code, like typing in a program, and you see an answer, and all of a sudden you just see this little thing pop up, and you see the master control just go, "You sure enough come back, Flynn," and you just hear Flynn go, "Hey, hey, hey, this is the master control program that everyone's been talking about." It's like it's so freaking funny. Um, but yeah, um, and then Flynn keeps on typing more, and well, Flynn doesn't realize, but we see the laser kind of boot up and about to like setting right behind Flynn, and You see him, still typing, and you see the laser go like whoosh, and it catches him, and you see like you start seeing the hands like it's like do, and you just see him like slowly start like disappearing, and you see him enter into the game world. Um, and and then yeah, this is like the first real sequence or the first real shot of the film that really shows you what the game world looks like, along with the transition into the game world, where you see the camera like flying through all these like data bits and stuff like that, and, so, and then you see him just plop down, and all of a sudden, and then he gets thrown into like a cell kind of thing, which is for programs to play the games, and that's where we first are introduced to um where that's where Flynn's first introduced to Ram and Tron. Well, really Ram, because Flynn finds Tron in a couple scenes, um, and then the first real game that Flynn plays, which is like that, it's basically volleyball, but it's the so basically instead of like you using your arms to like in like this position to like hit it, you get these like I don't know how to describe it, but it's basically like it is an extension of your hand where it goes out and then it curves so that you can catch it, and then you trying to throw it, and it goes like ring, and it goes like flying, and it hits the roof, and then if it your goal is to try and catch it, and if you don't catch it, then it's gonna hit a certain part of the ring that you're sitting on, and you can try and jump over it, or just plummet to your death, or try and hold on for your dear life. And Flynn wins in the match, which um and he's able to get his opponent to he's like holding on like, oh, help, and supposedly in the game you're supposed to throw it one more time on the thing on like the one that he's holding on to knock him off and for you to be the winner. And yeah, Flynn's like, yeah, I shouldn't do that. And you just see Sark go like, finish the game, and then Flynn's like, no, or like, he screams no, and then the Shark's like, kill him, and then you see you see him holding on, and you just see ding, and it's like, oh, um, and then after that Flynn gets thrown back into the cell, and then meets up with Ram. Well, no. Because after that, he gets thrown into the room with Ram and Tron, which leads to the light cycle match, which is my next favorite scene. And it's probably the most memorable part of the movie, because if you know what Tron is, you know the light cycle match, or you know what the light cycle is, which will later would actually appear in not only Tron Legacy in the TV show, but also in GTA 5. Well, a variation of the Tron cycle. Um, but yeah, it would go on to appear in GTA 5, which I thought was actually kind of a cool idea. Um, but yeah, and then my next favorite scene would honestly be, because like, not saying that nothing really happened between like the middle and the first part of the third act, but it wasn't like really something or really anything that I would say is my favorite scene. Um, but um, and it was really like the whole climax of the film where they get all the principal characters are at the master control, like the actual master control in the game world. Um, all the elders are getting their energy whisked away, and the master control program is like, there's there's a warrior on the way, and then it eventually comes down to the fight between Sark and Tron. Tron initially wins because you see him because it's a back and forth of the identity discs, which not only is on the cover for the movie right there, it's also on the Funko Pop. So this is what the identity disc is. It's basically just a frisbee, and a really cool frisbee too. Um, um, Basically the identity disc. If you guys haven't seen the movie, which why are you watching this review? If you haven't seen it, either you have seen it or you just don't care. Um, basically the identity disc is basically like I said, a frisbee that every time you throw it, it's like a. It doesn't go in like a. It doesn't just go in one direction, but like when you throw it, it's like it starts like flying around, and if it goes through you in the game world, you're dead, and you get it's like. I will say I can't really do the sounds that well, but if you guys don't want to know what the identity disc really kind of does, either look the scenes up on YouTube or just buy the movie on Blu-ray. Because there's for some reason actually Walmart has put the Blu-ray in stock for only like $12.96, so really good deal. But I'll talk about that later. Um, and yeah, so as I said, Tron initially defeats Sark. Um, and he tries to stop or tries to destroy the master control program, but apparently the master control program gives all of his energy to Sark, and not only makes Sark like a Godzilla-sized program, but also manages to keep himself alive with the remaining energy that he has. But yeah, basically like Sark is about to crush him, and then Flynn and Yori are come over the top of the building kind of thing that the master control is at, and Flynn jump into the beam, which kind of neutralizes the well, not doesn't really neutralize him, but it gives Tron enough time to throw his identity disc into the central point of the master control, which not only makes the master control uh, make the master control non-existent, but also defeats Sark. Um, and um, and then everyone in the computer world's all happy, and Flynn gets transported back into the real world. And because the overarching story of why Flynn was trying to get into the game world to steal data was to steal vital data that he created the games. Because there's a whole bunch of games in in this movie that there's a total of 5 games that Flynn has made. I don't really remember the names, but again, if you guys want to know the names, go and watch the movie. But yeah, he's made game. He was him and Dillinger were part of the same company, and um Flynn had made some games. And Dillinger kind of got jealous and took the code for the games and made them his own. So when Flynn would try and load the games up, he would just get nothing. And Dillinger eventually would get a promotion due to the games that he quote unquote created that he stole from Flynn. And he's got up to senior executive, was basically the CEO of Incom, which is the big company that controls not only the games, but also the master control program. Um, but um, by the end of the movie, the master control program is gone. He doesn't. The Dillinger isn't able to talk to the program anymore, and in a one-sheet document that's actually pretty short, it is cleared that that Dillinger stole the game. To basically sum it up, that Dillinger did steal the ideas and the games from Flynn, and it says that original maker of the games was Flynn, and he becomes the CEO of Amcom Mainframe. Um, which I thought like, hey, that's cool. Um, and yeah, so that's really it for my favorite scenes throughout the movie. Uh, but that's really it for favorite scenes. And now we're gonna get on to the fun facts. Um, um, so we have two fun facts for this episode, or for Tron, I should say. First fun fact is that 90% of everything that takes place in the video game world was done with computers. So as I said, kind of like at the beginning of this video, um, mostly everything was done with computers. Especially in the video game world. Um, really nothing in the real world, because obviously why would you need computers in the real to do visual effects in the real world? And even then, there was nothing really special in the real world. It was more just editing tricks. Um, but once we get into the game world, that's where the visual effects really kick in. The costumes are great. Like the suits. I'm gonna use this Funko Pop as an example, but the suits are great. Um, Technically, it should be the other way around. Like the blue part should be white, and the white part should be blue. But I guess really this is the only real way in terms of toys to make it so, well, for this one, to make it so that when you put it in a UV light and turn all the lights off, it will appear all the white lines would appear blue. But um but yeah, I think the costume design is great, and I think the optical work to make all the lines blue, because I think each frame, or for every scene with a human in the game, it was 5 different layers of exposure, because you have to have the faces, you have to have the line, like the blue lines, you have to have the outlines of the suits, you have to have the background frame, and then I think you have to have, it was one more frame, and they had to combine all of them into one final shot. Um, if you want to find more if you want to find out more about this, there will be a link in the description below for for another review about Tron that goes more into depth about the actual um making of the not only the visual effects, but also the suits and other things like that. Um, but like I said, suits look fantastic. Everything else in the game world looks great, and I love the transitions between the game world and the real world and vice versa. Really, you don't really get to see um the like you don't see really anything in the real world except for the beginning and then at the end. Um, and then everything else in the middle is literally just in the video game. Um, and I thought that's kind of clever. Um, and yeah. And then the second actually, well, really quickly to finish off the first fun fact. But yeah, like really everything that's in the video game world is done with computers. I don't know what parts were. Well, I mean, yeah, really everything except for like the costumes and like the people were done in computers. Like the light cycles, everything that has to do with like the quote unquote vehicles in the game world were done with computers. Um, and it's just yeah, like really all the backgrounds, all the vehicles in the game world, and like all the special effects and shit like that. That was all done like, with the computer. The only things that were not done with the computer was the people, because like I said, you have to have those 5 exposure layers, and then add them all up, and then you get your final frame or your final shot, and then so that has to all to be that has to be done optically, which obviously involves chemical mats and stuff like that. But again, to find out more about that, go to the video in the description below. But obviously keep on watching this, because you know, I mean, check these people out because they know way more stuff than I do. But also, I want to give this information out to maybe people that don't really know about movies like Tron and stuff like that. But anyway, and the second fun fact I have is that the film was not submitted to the Academy Awards because the Academy thought that they cheated because they used computers. Yeah, so when this because yeah, so this film was not submitted to the Academy Awards because the Academy felt that they cheated because they used computers, which is crazy. And I think only 25%, and like we said, there's only really 25% of CGI in the movie. Yeah, grandly, all the stuff in the video game world was done with computers. But in terms of actual shots that were done with computers, like actual like moving shots, really only 25 minutes worth or 25% of the shots were done with CGI. And all the rest of it was standard film like techniques. And it's crazy to think about like the film not getting being uh submitted to the Academy Awards, which is nuts. The final thing I want to talk about is the music. The music was composed by Wendy Carlos, who, if you guys are film buffs, you guys may know that 2 years before Tron, she worked on a little film called The Shining, and made the chilling music for that film. And she does a great job with the music in this film. I think there might be a soundtrack release of this film. I'm not exactly sure. Uh, and I don't know if there's a isolated soundtrack on here, because I don't really know. I haven't checked out all the special features, but yeah. If you can't find the soundtrack by itself in its entirety, I do recommend going and checking it out. And yeah. So, really, final thoughts on Tron. Uh, which was, I forgot that I actually mentioned this earlier. This was released on July 9th of 1982. 1982 was the year of movies which included, Rocky 3, Star Trek 2, um, First Blood, Blade Runner. But the big one of 1982 was E.T. E.T. stormed the box office that year. It made certain films like Blade Runner become bombs, but later on obviously become some of the most renowned movies of all time. But anyway, um, luckily Tron was not a financial flop. It was, like I said earlier, it was a success. Um, but yeah, overall, Tron, I think it's a really good movie, and I think everyone should check it out. Um, which should do I recommend the sequel, Tron Legacy? I personally haven't seen the film yet. Um, but I do want to check it out. I heard that it wasn't a bad film, just not as good as this one. Um, but um, I do want to check it out. But anyway, I'm gonna give this film a 7 out of 10. This is a really good video game science fiction flick. Um, that isn't your usual video game science fiction flick. Um, but anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for Thursday, and if not Thursday, Friday, for the Last Starfighter review. And then Saturday, we're gonna be starting kind of a series. Not a series, but kind of a special that we kind of did uh 2 months ago. But anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed, and end of line. Out.